different rooms of Mama Discovery.
Hmm. Hot dog.
song fell silent as on the cross the light was pierced with dark. The word of life to death now hangs surrendered. The one who spoke out stars now breathes his light. And who am I, the lowliest of sinners, that you would pay the price my sin deserves? My Maker's God, for those who marred his likeness, and from his wounds rose mercy unreserved. Join the song as all creation.
Have a great time, share.
Okay, that works. That's good.
This one works. Hey. So, good morning, everyone. We're Jason and Joanne Berman. Jason's from PA. I grew up in Dalmeny, went to this church, so it's nice to be back here. And we're excited to tell you about our lives living in a place called Hurry Hills in Africa. So, we'll start off with some maps because a lot of people don't know where Hurry Hills is. So, on the left, there is a map of Africa, and Kenya is in the red. And then on the right is a map of Kenya. So Nairobi is at the bottom. That is where the main airport is, where you fly into the country. And then if you just go a little bit north of Nairobi, you see Meru, and that's about like where the equator is. And then when you keep going up north, you see a city called Marsabit, and that is where the nice roads end, and that is where like the last big city is. And from there to Nairobi is about an 8-hour drive without stopping. And then from there up to the Arrow is another 4-hour drive on some rougher roads. And the Arrow is up where Hurry Hills is.
So I'll give you just sort of map of the area that we live in. So Hurry Hills itself is a hill range that's about maybe 5 kilometers sort of east to west and about 40, 50 kilometers north and south. And so we live, there's a circled spot called AIC Carabara. So the compound we live on is a mission station run by Africa Inland Church, and it's called Carabara. But there's also some blue dots you see in different places. Those are the three, and well, mainly there's 3 villages that we have church gatherings in regularly. And so we travel to each of those places each week, several times sometimes, and we will share with those people. There's also some other villages kind of in different directions all around, but those are the ones that we spend most of our time in. Oops, other way. So this shows the compound that we live on, and this picture is taken from a big tall hill that's right kind of next to our compound, looking down on it. You can see sort of in the middle near the top, there's a house with a green roof, so that's where we live. And then on the left, there's a white building, and that's our teammates' house. And then kind of in between, closer to our teammates, there's a workshop and some houses where our watchmen work, the workers who stay with us and help us do maintenance and help us with ministry in general. And then there's also sort of you can see an outline around the compound, and that's our stone wall that is made sort of it's a fence, but it's not really, it's only about this tall in most places, and made of stone. So it's kind of to deter livestock from coming in, or at least to show the shepherds where they're not supposed to be. Whether they actually go there or not depends on the day.
So these are our teammates that we work with. Their names are Edgy and Solange Silva, and they're from Brazil. They've been there for 10 years now, and so it's been great to be able to work with them because they have a lot of advice and experience working with the Gabra people. And then these are our workers that live on the compound with us. The man next to me in the sunglasses, his name is Duba, and he's one of our watchmen, so he helps take care of the compound. And then on the other side, the 2 younger gentlemen are Guyo and Galgalo, and they kind of share the responsibilities of helping us on the compound, as well as going out with us to the villages to help translate, because a lot of the people out there don't speak any English, and they only speak like their tribal language. And a few of them speak Swahili, but not a lot, so they're great for helping us with language. And then the other gentleman in the middle, in the green hat, he's just one of our shepherd friends who was in the picture with us. And this is our house. A lot of people are very curious about what our house looks like and what we live in. So this is the outside of the house. It's not at all like what they live in, as you will see in a few minutes. But okay, so I'm going to give you a tour of our house. You can come on inside. So it's just a video tour of our house here. I can just talk on the mic.
And if we go into the shed over there, then
That's our freezer, and then our solar panel equipment.
our solar equipment is out there. And then you can come on into the kitchen. So we've got a very large kitchen.
Yeah, so this is the kitchen.
Not like a camping house. But here's our water filter.
Yes,
Clean water from our
that's our water filter for clean water for drinking.
chest.
And our fridge is also a chest fridge.
And then we've got a nice big table. And then we can head this way. We can go, and over here we have a multi-purpose room. That is, we got our washing and Jason's office.
There's the washing machine and the office and music area.
Sermons and devotionals and the medical equipment for when people come to us.
And there's the medical equipment for my medical ministry.
And then we can go down the hallway here. And we find there's the bathroom.
And a bathroom, which looks pretty normal.
Just like a normal bathroom with a solar hot water heater on the roof. And then we can go to the room next door. And here's the bedroom.
And a bedroom,
Really simple.
also pretty normal.
And we can go, you can stop here and go, here's our back door. There's a sleeping porch out there. That's where we have goat roasts and sheep roasts when people come over and give us animals. It's a nice screened in area with shade. And we can show you the other side of the house. So it's a very large house, much larger than most houses. And we've got another spare room here, and my electric piano.
They do not know that I own a piano. That's a secret inside our house.
Another spare bedroom over here. We set up a queen size air mattress for people to sleep on. And then our last room is right next door here. And
There's our pantry.
it's our pantry.
We go shopping once every 3 months, so we need lots of shelves for storage.
Figure out what I'm doing, but this is our house. Oh, here's our living area. I didn't talk about this one. This is where we sit. Our internet corner, where the best internet is in that corner.
Yeah, we don't have very good cell network in our house, and so just that corner is where it's the best. So that's where we can get a little bit of internet. So that's a bit of our house. So it's a pretty normal house, not too different from what we have right here.
This is our vehicle. So this vehicle is used for a fair amount of things. It works pretty hard sometimes. We have to load it up with 3 months worth of supplies to bring it up, and sometimes it's a little bit overloaded. And then we have to climb up the hills into the Hurry Hills, which can be a pretty steep climb sometimes. And depending on the weather, it can be pretty muddy or it can be pretty rocky, or depends what it's like. We also use it to help in various ways with ministry. So sometimes we will take people to wherever they need to go. Usually the villages will come and ask us if we can take someone somewhere, and there's no other way to get them there. So I know the largest group I had was 21 teenagers bringing them to school, and that was a bit of a sardine pack into that vehicle. But they were there, and we got them there safely. It was about an hour drive, so somehow they survived being squished together like that. Sometimes we will transport animals on the top, usually. So sometimes people will give us sheep or goats, or they want to transport them someplace else with our vehicle. And so we'll load them on the top. One time in this picture, there's even a cow. It was pretty sick, so it's not very big, but we had to get a cow on there. And so that was interesting, helping them lift the cow on top of the car, because that's pretty high up. But we have a rule that there's no animals inside the car, because otherwise it gets pretty dirty in there. So, but we often move all sorts of things. Sometimes we'll even help with medical needs. So we'll use the vehicle sort of as an ambulance, and we'll take people for about an hour and a half drive to the closest hospital. We've had IV bags hanging from the handles in the car, and people kind of squished in there to keep someone okay. And then it's always a question of, okay, how fast do I drive? Do I drive so it's like a smooth ride for someone who's sick, or do they need to get to the hospital now? Yeah, and this is kind of a couple of pictures of what the roads look like. Depending on where you are, the conditions vary a lot. Most of them are generally not good. Think like off-road quad trails in Saskatchewan. They're kind of mostly like that. And so some places they'll be really muddy when there's rain, or they'll be really dusty. Some places there's a lot of rock, and so that can be really hard on the vehicle and really hard on the people riding in the vehicle. And in some places you're climbing really steep hills and going up and down. And so the roads are not ideal, but they get us where we need to go, and we don't usually have any trouble getting to those places. We've only been stuck a couple of times. And so this tractor is showing that we have an airstrip near our property. And so AIM runs this airstrip. They don't really use it very often, but when we came, it was in really bad disrepair. There had been some rains a few years earlier that were really heavy, and they washed out a lot of the airstrip, and so there were big ruts and there were rocks sticking up. And so when Joanne's parents came, John helped us to move some dirt in and fill in the gaps and smooth it all out to make it usable again. And since then, we've had a few flights in. I think probably 5 or 6 different planes have come in, mostly pretty small ones. Well, all of them are pretty small. This is the biggest one that we've had. And so they'll usually come up to bring some supplies for us or for our teammates, or sometimes they'll bring up visitors. We've had a few short-term workers who have come up for a few weeks, and it makes a big difference for them to be able to fly straight there within a few hours rather than to drive for maybe 2 days to get to us. When they're only in Kenya for 2 weeks, driving for 2 days on each end of that takes a lot of time out of it. So having that airstrip working has made a big difference for us.
And then, so that's our compound. The rest of the area, Hurry Hills, is a lot of villages comprised of the Gabra people. The Gabra are the tribe that lives in the area. And so this is a general picture of The village, it's kind of spread out with some houses scattered. There's no big roads because there's no vehicles to drive on those roads. So there's just little walking paths between the houses. And their houses are traditional. They are made to move. So they are made with sticks in the ground. And the women are the ones that build it. So they put the sticks in the ground and then they tie other sticks together with ropes on it. And at the end, it looks like a lattice network like this. And then they start tying pieces of fabric and plastic and animal hide and thatch and all kinds of things onto it to cover it all and make it waterproof. And it's always the same design inside the house. To the right of the door is always the kitchen. So this is their kitchen. They're cooking with a fire with 3 big rocks and then a small fire in between them. And then they set the pot or balance it on top of those rocks. And if they want it higher or lower, they just move the sticks for the fire. And then on the left to the doorway is a small little sitting area. And halfway through the house is a small little wall. And behind that is their beds. So that is what their houses look like.
There's some other types of houses they build mainly for the purpose of collecting rainwater. And so these are kind of a typical rectangular building with a metal roof. And then the walls they will sometimes fill in with sticks, or sometimes they will use stones to fill in all the gaps. And then often they will then cover that, all the little holes, with mud or with cement to fill it in and make it a sealed or sort of sealed wall to block out the wind and the elements. And the main reason that they build those ones is because then off of that roof they can put gutters and collect rainwater, which is a huge deal for them since there's not really much water source in the area. This is a picture of one of our watchmen building us some furniture. We actually have these stools that he's built. They're out there. We could have brought them in, but if you want to look at them, they're just out in the front. And they're carved by hand. They take a whole log, whole chunk of wood, and they just chop everything away that they don't need, and they end up with a stool. They're actually a pretty light wood, so they're not that heavy to haul around. But yeah, and so that's what they sit on. They're pretty short, but that's what everyone uses for their furniture. There's often that's all they have. Sometimes they will have plastic furniture from other parts of Kenya, but not very often. Usually it's just these stools.
And then when they're cooking, they usually cook inside their house, but if they're cooking for a big group of people, they'll cook outside. And so this you can see, they have a little shelter. And then in the next picture this is the church kitchen. So it's a little bit different than our church kitchen. They're all on the ground and they have lots of fires and lots of big, huge pots, but they are very efficient and very good cooks. They make really good goat stew and rice. And this is what the plate of food usually looks like. They serve it on big platters that everybody eats out of together. It's a communal plate. On the bottom is a layer of rice, and then they put a little bit of boiled potatoes and cabbage on top, and then they'll put sheep or goat pieces of meat on the top with bones in there. They cook the meat with the bones in to add more flavor, and then they also add salt. That's their only seasonings that they use. Sometimes they'll also eat like beans or maize. And then they always serve it with a cup of hot tea that's very milky and sweet. And then for ceremonies, sometimes they also serve coffee, which looks a little bit different than our coffee. It's very milky as well, like half milk, half water. And they put the whole coffee bean in there as well. And so you can see the coffee beans are floating on the top here. And then when they serve you a cup, they serve you the coffee beans floating in there, and you can eat them if you want. But that's usually at a wedding or when a boy is born.
It's very different coffee from what we're used to.
And so they usually, since they eat together, then they usually sit together and are often found just sitting around drinking their tea or their coffee and sharing lots of stories together.
So this is a picture of one of the shepherd boys. They start out pretty young. They'll often be just taking care of the young sheep and goats that are close to the house. And so they'll be following them around, kind of around the village or around wherever they're living, and taking care of them and then bringing them back to the house so they're close by. And then as they get bigger, they can take care of bigger animals. People will often give us sheep or goats as gifts or as kind of a repayment for something that we've done to help them. And so sometimes they're very generous with those. They have a big culture of hospitality. And so when someone comes and is involved in their lives and has been visiting them a lot, then often they'll give us a sheep or a goat, or some of our visitors who have come will receive an animal. And so traditionally they would slaughter it together with you, and you would stay there and eat it until everyone's done. But sometimes when you arrive later in the day, that's not going to happen, and so they'll often send them home with us, and then we'll invite them over for another day to come and eat with us. Yeah. And so as the shepherds get bigger, then they'll be taking care of bigger animals. This is a teenage boy kind of walking with most of the younger cows, but some of the bigger ones. And usually when they're this age, they'll be with a group of other older boys as well. And so some of their older brothers or their father might be with them as a group, and they'll all be together taking care of maybe a couple hundred head of cattle, or also a group of sheep and some goats and some donkeys might be along with them as well. And then once they're older, once they're adults, they'll be taking care of camels. And so this is a picture of one of the men milking his camel. And they milk all of their animals, so milk is a huge part of their staple food and their life there. This is an interesting picture of a camel. They're quite the characters. He's kind of showing off his teeth there. And these are the corrals that they use. So you can see kind of in the bottom there's some really long thorns, and they're like a couple inches long, some of them. And so the branches, actually all of the trees in Hurry Hills basically have thorns on them of some different type of shape or size. And so they'll use these branches and put them around in a big circle, and that's the corral for their animals. They'll keep the animals from going out because they're so sharp that they don't want to go past them. And it also deters other animals, other predators from coming in and attacking them. And this is a picture of some younger cows inside one of those corrals.
And sometimes the animals get out of the corrals and they wander off, and it's not uncommon for them to come visit us. And so we are often found redirecting them in a different direction. And this is what their shepherd camps look like. So the shepherds, they camp out beside those corrals with the animals. This is a young shepherd boy. He's got, on the right of this picture, is a small fire where you can see. They don't usually carry much food with them, and so they usually live on a diet of fresh milk, of hot milky tea, of fermented milk that is like similar to cottage cheese but like super acidic. It's hard to drink. And then smoked milk. So that's not a very varied diet and pretty liquidy, but that's what it fills them up. And the smoked milk, they take those yellow jugs in there. Those are empty cooking oil jugs. And they take a stick from the fire and get it to blow out, so it's just smoking a lot. And then they put the jug upside down and they stick the stick inside the jug. And once it fills with smoke, then they'll put the lid on. And after a few minutes, then they'll pour fresh milk inside there. And then the milk is smoked, and it lasts a lot longer because they don't have any refrigeration for their milk to last. So they either have to drink it or ferment it or smoke it. And then on the left side of the picture is where they would be sleeping. So you can see on the ground there's a few blankets, and on the branches there's some plastic, so they would use that as their bed, just sleep on the ground and cover themselves up a little bit. And it's not uncommon for like hyenas or something to come in the night and come attack their animals, and so they have to be careful and watching and not sleeping. And sometimes, one time, one of our friends told us that he, like in the middle of the night, the hyenas were attacking his animals, so he had to jump up and he had to start chasing the hyenas away and protect his animals. And he was able to do that, but when he jumped up, then he stepped on a huge thorn because he didn't put his shoes on. And so he had to have a huge thorn in the bottom of his foot as he was chasing these hyenas away, and then he walked for a few kilometers to come to our house to get me to take it out for him. So it's definitely not an easy life or a luxurious life, but it's how they live and it's what they know.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes there's fires in the area, especially during the dry season. We've had a long time, actually it's been over a year and a half since there was really any real rain there, and so it would be very dry again now. And so sometimes when it's been really dry, there will be fires. Sometimes they're caused just by shepherds who are careless with their cooking fires, or sometimes just from the heat. There are various different reasons, but when a fire takes hold, then it really kind of rips through the grassland, and if it gets into a forested area, it can get pretty heavy. And because there's not really a source of water up there, if it's a dry season, which is usually when the fires are, you don't have much of a way to fight those fires. So you're kind of trying to keep people away from it. And what you can do is beating on it with branches, basically, branches and shovels. So people will be looking for branches that have as many leaves on it as they can get, so these flames wherever they are, and try to keep it back. We've tried to hold off a few grass fires in our area, and it's pretty hard work, and they get tired pretty fast, but they can keep on going. And sometimes they get injured because they're often just wearing shorts and sandals, and they have nothing really to protect them from the flames. So if a ember comes up and catches them, then they get burned. So it's not exactly great, but normally they survive.
Yeah. And then the last animal that they keep are donkeys, which are seen as different from the other animals because these ones are pack animals, and they just use them for transporting water and firewood with using the harnesses that they are wearing, made out of wood strapped together with ropes. So people are often interested in what other wildlife we have up there. We've got a lot of lizards around our house, which catch lots of bugs. And we've got some interesting birds. This is, I think, the coolest looking bird that comes to our house. He's a hornbill. And we've got some helmeted guinea fowl, which are also interesting looking. They eat lots of ticks. And this is a type of antelope. It's called a greater kudu. He's fairly large, and he's got like twirly antlers, so it's interesting. And baboons, they live close to our compound, and they'll often come and destroy our garden. So they're a bit of a nuisance. We have a slingshot by the door, but we don't shoot them. We shoot towards them to scare them away.
I aim at them. It's not going to hurt them any.
Yeah. And they move really fast. So if you do hit them, you're doing pretty good. And then we also have a leopard. He usually comes during the drought. He's looking for water. In the evenings, we can hear lapping in our bathroom, and it's him drinking our drain water from washing our hands or brushing our teeth. So he's close to our house, and we don't go outside at night. And then there's also hyenas that live outside. This one, he also comes and does the same thing, drinks out of our bathroom drain water. And one time, we have a picture of them walking away with our bathroom drain spout because they wanted it.
So when we first arrived in Hurry Hills, our teammates were preparing to build a church in two of the villages. And so we helped them with that. So we did some work with the local people, getting them to give them some different jobs so that they could earn some food, and we built these two church buildings. The two villages that we built these churches in, our teammates had already been there for a few years, and they had been gathering with people outside their houses and under trees and wherever they were, just out in the open. And so these church buildings kind of gave them an opportunity to have a place that's kind of, it's the place that belongs to where the Christians meet. It's where they normally go. And it's also just a place that keeps you out of the elements, makes it easier if there's rain or even just the normal wind, because there's always a lot of wind. It keeps you inside and makes it easier to do some of the things that you want to do as a group. The traditional religion of the Gabra is called Ayana, and it's a form of spirit worship that involves a lot of their animals. Their animals are very much a part of their religion, as if the whole part of their lives. It's everything to them, really. And so they'll often have animal sacrifices and rituals that involve different types of animals at different times of the year. They involve the moon and the stars in their worship, and the cycles of the moon really shape when their ceremonies are, what they do, and so they kind of follow all of that, and it can be very much a part of their whole life. It's very much embedded in the entire culture of the Gabra. So when someone's becoming a Christian, it's very hard for them to leave some of these practices behind, because it's really what they are. It's everything about them. And so when we built these churches, then of course the animals wanted to come as well, and sometimes the animals were causing damage to the buildings, especially the donkeys. And so we had to. You can see actually there's a missing window in this picture, and so we built a fence around the buildings to protect them, to keep them from getting destroyed really quickly, and that made a big difference to keep them a little bit more sustainable.
And so because we live out in our own part, out far from the villages, every day we get up and we go to one of the villages for different reasons. One of the reasons that I go to the village sometimes is for healthcare. So this is a local healthcare clinic. I go there a couple days a week, and it's good because it's good for me to keep my practice up, and it's also good for them to have some more help, because there's about 4,500 people that live in these hills, and there's only 2 nurses and a nutritionist that are their healthcare. That's all they have for healthcare in the area. So having one more nurse is a little bit better for the numbers. And it's also great just for relationships. When we first arrived in Hurry Hills, we were told that this one village is very into Ayana worship, and they do not want anything to do with Christians there. And so we should not go there because they're just going to chase us away and not be happy. And so we didn't go there, and I started helping out at the health center, and I noticed that a lot of people that were coming were from this one village. And so I got to know a little bit of them in our short, brief interactions with each other. And earlier this year, before I came back, we were in a bad drought, and a lot of villages were coming to ask us for water. And a group of women showed up at our compound one day from this village, Ganjora, and they showed up at our house and said, "We need water as well, and we have gotten to know you from seeing you at the health center, and so we would like you to come to our village too now." And so when we go and do the water relief, we also share a Bible study. We give out audio Bibles. We pray with them. And so it's not just water. It's it's them inviting us into their village to come and do ministry with them. So that was really cool. And so it shows just how God is working in different ways and in different villages and people's lives that we don't even know about because we weren't focusing on that village at all. So this is what the audio Bibles look like. They're little solar-powered devices. A lot of the people, especially if they're our age or older, they've never gone to school, and so they don't know how to read or write. So giving them a normal Bible does not really do a whole lot because they don't know how to read it. So what we normally do is we give out these little solar-powered devices that they can charge in the sun, and then they listen to it, and they will listen to them. A lot of them listen to day and night, especially the shepherds when they're walking on the hills with their animals. And because they're so auditory learners, then by listening to it, they memorize it, and they can repeat back huge sections of scripture just by listening to it so much. So it's a great way for ministry and for them to get to know the Bible. And then another reason that we go out is just to sit and have tea with people and fellowship together in an informal way. Because a lot of the time we're going out and we're doing Bible studies or we're doing church services. And so it's good just to meet informally and sit around and talk, and we can practice our language skills. And because everybody our age or older, if they haven't gone to school, they haven't learned English or Swahili. So it's great for us to practice our Gabra language and just create more relationships, because if you have good relationships and friendships with people, that's so important and vital for building up the church and discipling people. And then sometimes we go out in the evenings and we set up a projector and a screen and we show the Jesus film or other videos in their language that talk about Bible stories. So part of what we are wanting to raise funds for while we're here is that we can buy our own system of this, because this system does not belong to us. And so then we can go to other villages and use it more for more ministry. And we also have lots of work projects. So sometimes we're going to the village. This is one of the buildings that we built. It's a small building. We can sleep in it at night, so then we can stay in the village and spend more time with people and grow those relationships more. And we can also use it for Bible studies or for Sunday school, because before this, there were no buildings at all. And so you're just out in the windy elements and the sun and the dust, so it's nice to have some shelter. And lastly, the main reason why we usually go out is to do ministry and share the gospel. And so this is for one of the church services full of people before COVID started. They were really coming, and the church was really growing, and it was great to see. And then people here, churches here, the government shut down the churches last year, and then people stopped coming, and they kind of got in a habit of stop coming. So now we're trying to get people to start coming out again. And so it's been a little bit different. And right before COVID, we were going to do some baptisms, but then we couldn't, and so we're still waiting to do the very first baptisms of the Gabba people in the Hurry Hills. So there are people that are very eager and waiting for the government to give the okay for us to baptize them. So that'll be an exciting day when it comes, hopefully very soon. So that was a bit. We will talk more about like our ministry, actually, like what we're doing in the service. This was just more about the culture and what our lives look like physically. Some prayer requests, if you want to pray for us, are for more people to come back to church after COVID, because we've been trying to do that before we came back to Canada, and now our teammates are there, and they're also trying to get the church built up again and find those strong believers. We also want to pray for more leaders in the church. A lot of the roles, like Jason does the preaching, or our teammate does the preaching, and myself and Solange, we do a lot of the Sunday school, and we lead the youth and do like Bible studies. And so we're wanting to mentor and disciple strong leaders who have the heart for ministry to take over some of those roles from us, because they can do it so much better with their language skills than we can, and minister to each other better. We also want to pray for Guyo. Guyo is one of our workers. He will tell his story later, but he works with us, and he is going to Bible school right now. He wants to be a pastor and be the first Gabra pastor in Hurry Hills. And so it is exciting for us to have him there, and just pray for him that he will continue to grow and study well and be a good ministry person for Hurry Hills and leading the churches there. We also want to pray for rain, because, like we said, it's been about 1.5 years since we had a good rain out there, and rain is their only source of water. They don't have any wells or anything else, and so without rain, they're really hurting, and their animals are really hurting too. They're not as strong as they used to be. And also the last one is to pray for more workers to introduce Gabba to the Christ. There are so many villages that want us to come, but we don't have the time or resources to go to them, and there's so much more work to do before there are strong churches led and multiplying among the Gabber people. So there's lots of work to do, and not a whole lot of people to do it. So that's some prayer requests that we have for you.
We can teach you a song. This is the English. Let me
Yes.
just grab my equipment that I use there.
Yes, because singing is so important. The Gabra, they love singing. They will sing for like 45 minutes when we go there, easily. And so we thought it's good to teach you a Gabra song and get you involved rather than us just stand here talking. So, does anybody know this song in English? Yes? Okay, that's good.
It's a
We're not
pretty,
starting from scratch then.
pretty basic song.
Yes. So we'll sing the English verse first. We're only doing one verse. And then we'll do the Gabra verse. So I can teach you the Gabra words while Jason sets his guitar up. So the Gabra is Waki Wan Desa. So Waki is God, and Dasa is good. So Waki Wan Desa, Waki Wan Desa, Waki Wan Desa, Wan Desa Kwa Kia. Do you think you can handle that?
Can try.
You can try.
Hopefully this thing is still somewhat in tune. Kind of. We'll just do it with what we have. So
Okay.
we'll do the God is good first, just to get you into the song. So, God is so good. God is so good. God is so good. He is good to me. God is so good. God is so good. God is so good. He is good to me. And then we can do the
Are we
Gabra.
ready?
Sorry, I'm a bit out of tune, but it's not easy to tune. Waki wanda sa, waki wanda sa, waki wanda sa kwakia. Waki wanda sa, waki wanda sa, waki wanda sa kwakia.
Awesome.
So that's a song that they really love singing, because it's simple and easy, and the kids the kids can just sing it wherever they go.
Yes, and because they don't read, then like to have like songs with like tons of verses or different words in it, that's not easy for them to learn. And so a lot of their songs are very short and very repetitive, or else they're call and response songs. So that's what it is.
Yeah.
We can talk about our clothing. This is typically what the Gabber wear. We have, what I am wearing is just a very long piece of fabric wrapped around me, tied over the shoulder, and then wrapped around the waist. And then this is a mesh head covering that all the married women wear. If you are not married, you wear like a color one, but married women wear the mesh one. And then they wear a scarf over top, and they love their beads, and so you always wear lots of jewelry.
The men have typically just kind of a normal long sleeve dress shirt. This is a little bit nicer than what most of them have, but it's pretty similar style. Most of them are kind of just China sourced, very cheap shirts, but that's what they wear for their top. And then they wear, it's sort of a loop of fabric around them, and so they can pull that up and down however high they need it to be. If they're out running with the sheep, chasing after sheep, they'll probably have it kind of similar to this, so they might pull it up a little bit higher. If it's really cold, they'll wear it closer down to the ground to keep them warm. And they can also, they normally wear shorts under them. I'll show you how they also will wear them sometimes. Sometimes they will, this is attached to that. Let's not attach it to that. Sometimes they will put them just over their shoulder. And so in the middle of the day when it's hot and they don't want to stay warm anymore, they'll just stick it over their shoulder and walk along with it like that. And sometimes when they'll wear a thicker one around them in the cold days to keep them warm, and they'll use it kind of as a blanket. All of the elders will have some kind of a head covering. All of the adults have a head covering, but the elders have a specific one based on their position in the tribe. And so people who have more authority will have specific sort of hardened white pieces that are on their head. And so you can tell who someone is based on that. And most of them will always have a stick with them because there always could be an animal trying to get away somewhere. So you always have to be able to chase it away and send it where it's going. And sometimes the older men will just be standing somewhere leaning on their stick or whatever they're doing. So, yeah, I think that covers it all.
So that's what we prepared today. I think we've got a few minutes if anybody has any questions, or did we cover everything? For us, we've had some like really, really light rains and mists, and so to collect water for the locals, we need a few heavy days of rain because the first rains all just sink into the ground and it disappears because they have like dirt water catchments. For us, because our house is so large, we have a huge metal roof that we can collect it off of. So even if we have a really light, short rain, we can still collect some water off of that. And that's why the people are starting to build some more smaller houses with metal roofs on it. So we've been able, and also we have like 30,000 liters worth of water.
Yeah.
And
Storage, not normally full.
Yes, and so because we have so much water, the locals don't have that much, and so we've been able to just use it very cautiously and carefully, and so we haven't run out of water on our compound. But the locals, when they run out of water, then they have to hire trucks that will come, and it costs like $400.
So $400 usually.
Yeah, $400 for like 10,000 liters of water. And so that water disappears very quickly when you have a herd of cows and camels drinking it. So it's very expensive for them in a time of drought because their money just disappears for water.
It also helps that we don't have livestock, and so the amount of water that we use as just the two of us and our teammates as well is a lot less, rather than feeding or giving water to all of your cows or sheep or whatever you have. Normally, during the dry season, they won't keep all of their animals near their homes in Hurry Hills because there are water sources other places, just not as much grazing in those places. And so they'll send their animals someplace else where there's a better source of water. and they will just keep maybe a few cows closer to home where they can milk them and have enough for their tea. So yeah, we don't have animals on our compound, so we don't, or not as very many, so we don't have as much water usage there, which helps a lot.
Yeah, yeah, and if you're careful with your water, it's surprising how little water you can use and still get everything done that you want to.
It's not really feasible to drill wells in Hurry Hills because the elevation is really high and it's really rocky. So to put it in perspective, when we drive up into the Hurry Hills, we drive about 40 kilometers, and during that we're climbing a kilometer from where the desert is to where we are. And in the desert, there's water right under the soil almost, because that's where the level is all the way around us. And so in the desert, they can drill wells around there, but there's not very good grazing because it's really hot, and because there's a lot of animals there drinking the water and eating the grass. And so, but anyways, so going from there, you have a kilometer of height difference, and because the Hurry Hills are very narrow, there's not a lot of space for water to really sit in the soil. And so the water table is really not existent. It's probably a kilometer down. And being really rocky, it's almost impossible for them to drill wells through that. So I wouldn't say that it's impossible. It's difficult. And they've done a lot of studies to see places where it would be feasible to drill a well, and they've found that the places where they most need it, it just wouldn't be feasible. There are a few places not too far away, so you could do a shorter drive than what they do right now to get water, but it's definitely not as easy as we would like it to be. We can't just drill a hole where we would like, unfortunately. Crime? Crime isn't so bad. The Gabra have a really good kind of structure themselves. The government social structure. They're pretty on top of crime, and people know that they can't get away with things. It also helps that there's people around all the time, and so it's hard to not be caught doing something. And so they have kind of their own judicial system of the elders that they go to, and they make a decision together and then decide what they will do with someone who's committed some kind of crime. So people are pretty good overall.
We have never had anything stolen from us out there. And we don't leave things out, but we're not super careful either. And one time I was at the dispensary, the health clinic, and there was a commotion outside, and they told me, just stay inside because we're holding a court right here because someone did something they shouldn't. So there's upset people, so just stay inside. And a little while later, everything calmed down, and they said, yep, we determined him guilty, and so we put him in that building over there, and then tonight the police will come and take him to jail. So they have their system, and it works. And yes.
I think it was translated, so it's actually, technically it's not translated to Gabra, it's translated to Barana, which is kind of a neighboring tribe, and so it's a very, very similar language. It's actually written almost the same. You have to read it differently, like they pronounce words differently, but reading it out of the written text is almost the same. So I think it's actually been since '96 that one was ready.
I think so.
The audio Bible is a lot more recent, within maybe 3 or 4 years, I think. So they haven't had it in audio format for very long, but the written version they've had, although a lot of people weren't able to read it, because even if they learned, all of them know Gabra, but if they've gone to school and learned how to read and write, they're not learning to read and write in Gabra. They're learning to read and write mostly in Swahili. And so even if they've been educated and know how to read and write, they often don't know how to read their own language, which is kind of a strange concept, but it's not the country's main language, so the audio Bible is definitely key.
Yeah, they're not allowed to speak any tribal languages in their schools because there's so many different tribes and languages within the country. They want everybody to only speak Swahili or English in their school. So they don't study their own language and they don't learn to read it, which seems so weird to us because we read English. Our favorite new food? The goat roasts are pretty good. I don't mind goat or sheep meat. It's definitely not camel milk. Camel milk is my least favorite thing that they serve me. Or the super acidic. The super acidic fermented milk might be worse than camel milk.
Yeah. That's hard to stomach.
Yeah. Then you have
It's an
heartburn.
acquired taste. They love it though.
Yeah. But everything else that they serve us, we're fine with eating. We're good with it.
Well, I eat that, but not normally, not all the time.
Yeah.
They love that fermented milk because it's really thick and so it fills you up. So you can have like one little cup and that's enough to keep you going for most of the day because you've got so much in your stomach.
Yeah. Yeah, but we can't. I can't drink it. I can sip a little bit and then I'm done.
Mhm.
Since we moved up there, they have started, but once every week or two on a Sunday, they will have a truck come up and they will sell potatoes and cabbage and some carrots and bananas and sometimes mangoes. So that's the produce that we can get up there. And then when we go down, about once every 6 weeks, we'll go down to Marzabit, where like the end of the nice roads are. And there we can get like a huge variety of fruits and vegetables. And so we usually do like a big stock up then and fill a cooler up and then we put it in our fridge and fresh fruit and vegetables last about like a month in our fridge. So that's pretty good. And then the last week or two we'll eat frozen and then 6 weeks later then we'll head down all the way down to Nairobi usually for a longer break just to get more of a rest time. And we usually have immigration things that we need to do or meetings with like our organization. So we head down about every 3 months. We come all the way down just for a bit of a break because life is so different between what we're used to and how the Gabra live. So
Yeah, the only fresh food we really get up there is fresh milk. And then sometimes sometimes farmers will have beans or maize that they've grown and sometimes they'll share that with us, but it's also pretty scarce for them, so it's pretty precious if they've given us some beans. Yes,
Oh, yes.
we grew some vegetables. Depending on the season, in the rainy season, things grew really well, actually. Grew some carrots and potatoes, not so many normal potatoes. The sweet potatoes grew pretty well. Had some hot peppers grew really well, and
some lettuce and spinach. And yeah, Jason's pepper plants, he started them like when he first moved up there. And 2.5 years later, they are still going and still producing. They're like these pepper bushes
they're
now.
like this tall,
So who knew pepper plants never die?
and they're a lot more hot peppers than I could ever eat. They're fairly hot, so
Yes. So if anybody ever comes and visit us and likes peppers, then we can serve you some spicy food. But, oh yeah, pumpkins. There's, one of our friends actually grows a lot of pumpkins, and they're like huge pumpkins. And so he'll give us one, and I'll puree it and have pumpkin for like the next month or so. We get some good pumpkin soup and pumpkin pie. Mostly because if they knew that it was there, then they'd want me to bring it out to the village and play for weddings and things, and then it'd be out in the sun and the dust, and people would want to play it, and they are not usually the gentlest things with electronics because they're not used to knowing how to care for them. So anything really expensive doesn't have a very long lifespan usually out there. So just for the sake of keeping it and preserving it, then it
And
stays inside the house.
their music style is very, very different. So
Yes.
Joanne would not be able to play it in a worthy way for them for their
No.
celebrations. It would not sound right. So, but they would want her to because she has a piano. So
Yes.
it's kind of a secret because of that. We don't really want to use it in church for that reason because it wouldn't be very well cared for. we might find a cheaper keyboard sometime if they show the desire, but they haven't asked us about it. So
But then we also need to find a power supply
That
for
too.
it, because like they just have a little tiny solar panel usually, if they have anything, just enough to charge their cell phones. So
yes, it's a little travel guitar, kind of a strange machine. Say again? I don't. Again, their music style is very, very different. The way that I play guitar is not right for them. It just doesn't work. I would need to learn again. Mhm. They live not very far away from us. Like, if you compare it to a city block, it's like 1 block away from us, sort of, in distance, but on the same compound. So we can walk to their house in a few minutes. Yeah,
Yeah.
we work together a lot.
yeah, like right now we're on home assignment and they're there, and then this over the last year, then they were gone to Brazil to see their family and churches, and we were there by ourselves. But before that, we were there together. And when we go back, then we'll be working together again. So we do a lot of things together.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yep. In January. We have our flights booked for the middle of January. So I think we're done for time. So thanks for your questions and everything. And
Sure.
God, just want to bring Jason and Joanne to you today, and thank you for the work that you've been doing in them and through them. God, we just lift up the people of Gabra, and we ask that they come back to church. And we ask that you build strong leaders to serve in the church, and that there would be musicians too that would play Gabra music, and pray for Guyo as he attends Bible school. Just give him a deep motivation to lift up your name among his people and to speak your truth to people who don't know you yet. And God, we cry out for rain for that area of the world. God, please have mercy and send the needed rains. And we just pray too for more workers. God, Jesus said, ask the Lord of the harvest to send out workers into the fields. And we do ask, God, that you'd send out the people that you want to be there. Thank you for the co-workers that Jason and Joanne work with. Pray for continued good relationships, and that the way they love each other would really show the Gabra people that you are the Lord who can save. In Jesus' name, amen.